Sales revenue for the third quarter of 2012 amounted to 1,773 million Swedish krona. That's a decrease of 6% when adjusted for currency and structure. Operating profit EBIT amounted to 190 million krona, excluding one-off items of minus 7 million. The operating margin EBIT, excluding one-off items, amounted to 10.7%. The after-tax result amounted to 110 million krona. Earnings per share were 1.45 Swedish krona, and cash flow from operating activities amounted to 23 million Swedish krona. As you heard, Lindab reports an EBIT result of 190 million Swedish krona for the third quarter. That's an improvement of 10% compared with the same period last year. The 10.7% EBIT margin in the quarter can be seen as very encouraging, particularly in the light of a 6% organic sales decline. Just like the second quarter, this quarter has been challenging, with the construction market continuing to weaken in most European markets. The general market decline has had a negative impact on both ventilation and building component sales. Building systems contributed positively, however, as the important Russian market continues to show strong sales growth. Lindab remains cautious in their view about future demand levels. Macro indicators show a great deal of uncertainty in many markets, and Lindab's sales decline accelerated in the second half of the quarter. Lindab CEO David Brodetsky is with us now. What's your view on the quarter for Lindab as a whole?
The markets are challenging, as we all know. Demand is weak, and this resulted in a 6% organic sales decline in the quarter compared to last year. In this environment, I'm pleased to report that the EBIT margin has increased from 9.1% in Q3 last year to 10.7%. This is thanks to us over-delivering on our targets of increasing gross margins primarily through efficiency initiatives and reducing fixed costs. A creditable achievement in my view given the sales drop, and my congratulations and thanks to all Lindab employees for this performance.
Now, you mentioned that the sales decline is accelerating. What's the impact for you?
With the exception of Russia, demand in most markets showed an increased rate of decline in the second part of the quarter. It's likely that the weakness we see will continue in the coming months, but there remains a great deal of uncertainty in the markets, making longer-term forecasts difficult. We have already taken cost actions which have produced savings beyond the original January 2012 cost plan target, and we are prepared to take further action if required.
Also with us now is Per Nilsson, CFO at Lindab. Now, during the quarter, the Swedish government has announced that the corporate tax rate will be reduced from today's 26.3% to 22% from January the 1st, 2013. How will that affect Lindab?
Sweden is Lindab's home market, and a substantial part of our business is there. Close to 25% of our total sales during the last 12 months. If the new tax rate had been applied already in 2012, we estimate that the positive effect from lower tax payments would have been between 5 and 10 million SEK, based on the forecasted taxable profit. We also have valuation effects regarding deferred tax in the balance sheet. The revaluation of the deferred tax on the Swedish tax allocation reserves and other temporary differences, such as pensions, will have positive effects on the recorded tax amounts. This will be accounted for already in the closing balance 2012 and will therefore affect the Q4 income statement and balance sheet.
Moving on now to the ventilation business area, where sales revenue during the third quarter amounted to 904 million Swedish krona, which compares to 932 million for the equivalent period last year, a decrease of 3%, or minus 4% when adjusted for currency and structure. Operating profit, EBIT, excluding one-off items, amounted to 85 million krona, which compares to 65 million for the equivalent period last year. That's an increase of 31%. The operating margin improved from 7 to 9.4%. Sales in Western Europe were flat and the Nordic region showed decline. The CEE-CIS region showed strong growth when including the acquisition of Polish business Centrum Klima. The acquisitions of Centrum Klima, now a fully owned subsidiary within Lindab, and Elia, as well as the divestment of Benone, impacted sales positively by 5% compared to the same period last year. Within distribution, the first self-service branch in the Nordics in Odense, Denmark, has opened. The focus on energy efficiency remains strong. Comfort, the product area for indoor climate, launched a new highly efficient heating panel, Atrium Plana, during the quarter. Turning back to David Brodetsky now, how would you summarise the quarter for the ventilation business area?
The ventilation business area performed well, with an EBIT margin of 9.4% in the quarter, up from 7% in Q3 last year. Organic sales were down 4%, and the margin improvement came from reduced fixed costs and efficiency improvements. On the operational side, the integration of Centrum Klima progressed well, and we already see some synergies coming from merging Lindab's ventilation business in Poland into Centrum Klima. Synergies will accelerate in the coming quarters as we insource more fittings into our main production plants and as we use Centrum Klima's sourcing arrangement in Asia to reduce purchasing costs in our other markets.
For the building components business area, sales revenue during the quarter amounted to 576 million krona, which compares to 674 million for the equivalent period last year, a decrease of 15%, this figure being the same when adjusted for structure and currency effects. Operating profit, EBIT, amounted to 67 million Swedish krona, that's a decrease of 26%, with the figure for the equivalent period last year being 90 million krona. The operating margin declined from 13.4 to 11.6%. Sales within the Nordic region and the CEE/CIS markets continued to decline due to weak demand in both the residential and the non-residential segments. Cost reduction measures supplementary to the initial plan have been taken in CEE countries where demand has weakened more than previously expected. New products have been launched during the quarter, among them a new facade cassette and 2 decking profiles. Tools have also been developed and launched for simplifying calculation in accordance with European standards. David Brodetsky, sales within the building components business area declined by 15%. Why is the demand evolution weaker in this business area than the rest of the group?
There are 2 main reasons for this. Firstly, building components business exposure is directed towards Central East Europe, which is the region in the world that has most suffered from the economic downturn if we exclude the PIGS countries. There are no strong drivers there currently for demand, as the austerity packages hurt local consumption and also exports to Western Europe are at low levels. Secondly, building components is the business area that saw strong growth, particularly in Sweden in 2010 and 11, on the back of residential spend. That segment is now declining from its peak, which has of course led to further demand contraction for the business area. Building components has controlled well the areas that we can impact. Fixed costs are down and the gross margins have been maintained at a good level, which combined allowed the business area to report an 11.6% EBIT margin in spite of the 15% sales decline.
For the building systems business area, sales revenue increased during the quarter to 293 million Swedish krona. Compared to the figure of 285 million for the equivalent period last year, this is an increase of 3%. Adjusted for currency effects, the increase amounted to 10%. Operating profit, EBIT, amounted to 48 million krona. The equivalent figure last year was 22 million, and the operating margin increased from 7.7 to 16.4%. Sales continue to develop positively, mainly thanks to Russia and the CIS markets, whereas sales in Western Europe declined. The order intake in the third quarter was slightly lower than in the corresponding period last year, although the development in Russia and CIS remains strong. The first order for a small, more cost-effective building was received during the quarter. This concept will be rolled out fully at the beginning of 2013. And the expansion of the Yaroslavl plant in Russia will be completed at the end of 2012. A final question to David Brodetsky. The building systems business area showing an extremely good improvement in performance. Do you expect this to continue?
Building systems produced an impressive 16.4% EBIT in the quarter. Of course, Q3 is seasonally a strong quarter, so naturally the EBIT margin will not continue at such a high level in the coming quarters. If we look at the short term, building systems did have a reduced order intake in Q3, and this will affect our sales in Q4. Longer term, we don't see any change in the main trends. The building systems business area has a strong exposure to Russia and the CIS countries. These economies are performing well, and we expect this to continue, which will support the building systems business in the future. To capitalize on those opportunities and to grow further, we'll also have the benefit of the increased plant capacity in Yaroslavl, Russia, which should be completed around the turn of the year.
Our thanks to Lindab's President and CEO David Budetsky. You also earlier heard Lindab's CFO Per Nilsson. And that's all this time round. We'll be back on the 13th of February when Lindab's full year report for 2012 will be presented. Bye for now.